She walked into that interview room and sat across from the woman who had once called her a pig. The woman who had watched her belongings be scattered across a bedroom floor like rubbish. The woman who had smiled while her family threw an innocent person out onto the street. 6 years had passed. The addresses had changed. The bank accounts had changed. But here they were again, the same two women, the same room, and this time, the chairs were on different sides of the table. Stay with me, because this story is going to teach you something you will carry for the rest of your life. Welcome to Helen's Cultural Stories, where every week we bring you powerful African stories that entertain, inspire, and teach you something real. If you are new here, please hit the like button right now, drop a comment and tell me what you think, and subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a story like this one. Now, let us go back to where it all began. Cape Town, 6 years ago, and a woman named Thandi. Cape Town is a city of two faces. From above, from the slopes of Table Mountain, from the glass towers of the V&A waterfront, it is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Blue water, white peaks, bougainvillea spilling over whitewashed walls. From the flats, from the cramped streets of Mitchell's Plain, Belleville, Delft, it is a city that demands everything from you and thanks you for nothing. Asante-Nkosi knew both faces. She had grown up admiring one and living in the other. At 26, she was a full-figured woman with dark expressive eyes, a gap between her front teeth that made her smile look like a celebration, and a stillness about her that people often mistook for meekness. She was not meek, she was measured. There is a significant difference, and Thandi's story is largely about what happens when the world confuses the two. She had recently moved from her mother's home in Mitchell's Plain to a room in a large residential property in Claremont, a quieter, more suburban part of Cape Town, owned by a man named Mr. Dlamuka, a retired businessman, well-dressed, well-spoken, proud of his property and proud of his family name in equal measure. His daughter, Zola, lived in the main house with him, and from the very first week, Thandi understood that Zola Dlamuka was going to be a problem. The environment you enter always contains both the opportunity and the test. Pay attention to both from the beginning. Zola was 23, slender, and had the particular confidence of someone who had never been told no by anyone who mattered to her. She was not overtly cruel at first. She was the kind of person who delivers damage with a smile, a comment wrapped in a laugh, an insult disguised as concern. "Thandi, are you sure you should be eating that? I'm just worried about your health, you know. Some of these rooms aren't really designed for larger people. Just saying. My dad is so kind to everyone. He really does not discriminate at all." The other tenants, a quiet accountant named Saifo and an older woman named Mrs. Fortune, heard these things. Mrs. Fortune would click her tongue softly afterward. Saifo would look at his shoes. Nobody challenged Zola directly, because Zola's father owned the property, and that, in the logic of rental living, made her untouchable. Thandi responded to every comment the same way, with a brief, steady look, and then silence. She did not match Zola's energy. She did not provide the reaction Zola was looking for. But in the quiet of her room at night, she felt every word. People who mock others for their appearance are not commenting on you, they are revealing their own need to feel superior. But knowing that does not make the wound disappear. Feel it honestly, then decide it will not define you. The bracelet went missing on a Friday. Mrs. Dlamuka, Mr. Dlamuka's older sister who visited from George every few months, had come to stay for the long weekend. She wore, always, a white, silver and turquoise bracelet that had belonged to their mother. It was not replaceable. It was not insured. It was the kind of object that holds a family's memory inside it. On Saturday morning, it was gone from her bedside table. By Saturday afternoon, Thandi's door was being knocked on. She opened it to find Mr. Dlamuka, his sister, and Zola standing in the corridor. Behind them, at a respectful distance, stood Saifo, who had clearly been told nothing but had been summoned anyway. Mr. Dlamuka's voice was formal, controlled. "We need to check your room," he said. "There is something missing from the house." Thandi looked at him, then at his sister, then, briefly, at Zola, who was standing slightly behind her father with her arms folded and an expression that was carefully arranged to look like concern. "You are welcome to come in," Thandi said. She stepped back and opened the door fully, and they came in. The moment someone accuses you without evidence is the moment your character is on trial, not your guilt. How you open that door tells everyone in that corridor exactly who you are. They searched for 22 minutes. Thandi stood near the window while they went through her wardrobe, her chest of drawers, the box under her bed where she kept her documents and her mother's old letters. Mr. Dlamuka's sister sat on the edge of the bed and watched with red eyes. Zola moved through the room with more thoroughness than the situation required, lifting things, replacing them slightly wrong, as though she wanted to leave a mark. They found nothing. Of course they found nothing. When they left, no one apologized. Mr. Dlamuka paused at the door and said, "We are sorry for the inconvenience." It was the most impersonal sentence Thandi had ever heard in her own room. She nodded. She closed the door. She sat on the floor beside her bed, not because she was weak, but because her legs had decided that standing was no longer necessary for what she needed to do next, which was breathe. She breathed for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called her friend Nomvula. "They searched my room," she said. Nomvula's response was immediate and unprintable. Thandi almost smiled. The people who love you unconditionally are your first line of recovery after humiliation. Do not carry these moments alone. Find your Nomvula and make that call. 4 days later, Thandi found the bracelet. She had gone to the communal laundry area on a Wednesday evening, a small room off the back garden where a washing machine and 2 drying racks were shared between tenants. Zola's laundry was piled in the large wicker basket near the machine, unwashed and unattended since Sunday. A corner of silver caught the laundry room light. Thandi reached into the basket and lifted out a tangle of Zola's scarves. Beneath them, wound around the strap of a small canvas bag, was the bracelet. She held it in her palm for a long time. The laundry room was quiet. The light was a single bare bulb. Outside, she could hear the evening sounds of Claremont, a dog, a car, someone's music from 2 gardens over. She thought about what to do. She thought about the 22 minutes, about her mother's letters scattered across her floor, about Zola's arms folded in her doorway, about the way Mr. Dlamuka had said, "Sorry for the inconvenience," like she was a pothole. And then she made her decision. The moments that reveal your true character are never the ones you plan for. They arrive quietly, in laundry rooms, under bare bulbs, when no one is watching. Who you choose to be in those moments is who you actually are. Thandi walked to the main house and knocked. Mr. Dlamuka's sister opened the door. When she saw what Thandi was holding, her hand went to her mouth. "I found it in the laundry room," Thandi said simply. "I thought you should have it back." The older woman took the bracelet with both hands. She held it against her chest. Her eyes filled. "Where?" was all she said. "In the laundry basket," Thandi said. "Tangled in some scarves." From somewhere behind the older woman, deeper in the house, Thandi heard movement. Then silence. Then a door closing. She did not see Zola's face in that moment, but she would remember the sound of that closing door for a long time. "Thank you," Mr. Dlamuka's sister said. "Thank you, my child." Thandi nodded. She went back to her room. She made herself a cup of tea. She sat with the particular quiet of a person who has just done something difficult for no reward except the knowledge that it was right. That kind of quiet, she was learning, had a very specific texture. It felt like self-respect. Returning what you could have weaponized is an act of radical integrity. It will not always be recognized. It will not always be thanked, but it deposits something into your own character that no one can ever withdraw. The week after the bracelet was returned, Zola told anyone who would listen that Thandi had been snooping through her laundry. "She was going through my things," Zola said to Mrs. Fortune over tea in the garden. "What was she even doing near my basket? I find that very suspicious." Mrs. Fortune said nothing. Saiful, who overheard from his window, later told Thandi what was being said. Thandi listened. She thanked him. She went inside. She did not defend herself publicly. Not because she had no defense, she had an excellent one, but because she understood, with a clarity that surprised her, that defending herself to Zola's audience was a game she could not win. Zola controlled that narrative. Any response Thandi gave would be absorbed and reframed. The only defense that would last was the one she built with her own life. At the end of that month, Mr. Dlamuka informed her that he would not be renewing her lease. "The arrangement is not working out," he said. He did not elaborate. She did not ask him to. There will be seasons in your life when the truth is on your side and the outcome is still against you. This is not injustice winning. It is redirection wearing a painful disguise. Thandi moved out on a Saturday with a borrowed bakkie and Nomvula beside her in the passenger seat. She had fewer possessions than she arrived with. A small shelf had broken during the move and had to be left behind. But she had something she had not arrived with. She had clarity. Not the triumphant kind that arrives after a victory. The harder kind, the kind that arrives after you have been searched, suspected, and quietly discarded, and you discover that you are still standing, still intact, still entirely yourself. Nomvula's apartment in Belleville was small and warm and smelled of the cinnamon tea Nomvula drank constantly. Thandi slept on the pull-out couch for the first 2 weeks, then they rearranged the living room and created a semi-permanent corner that Thandi called her headquarters. Headquarters for what? Nomvula asked. I don't know yet, Thandi said. But something. The people who make space for you in their small apartments when your season is hard are some of the greatest gifts life gives. Receive that gift with gratitude, and one day, build a space large enough to return it. The headquarters became real faster than Thandi expected. A woman from Nomvula's church ran a digital skills program through a community center in Belleville, Microsoft Office, spreadsheets, business email, basic bookkeeping. 8 weeks, twice a week, free of charge. Thandi enrolled the same week she heard about it. She was the oldest in the class by 4 years and the most attentive by a considerable distance. She arrived early to every session. She wrote everything down. She stayed late to ask questions that the others had been too shy to ask. Her tutor, a brisk young woman named Farida who wore the same pair of orange earrings to every class, told Thandi at the end of week 6, "You have the kind of brain that turns information into systems. That is not common. Do not waste it." Thandi wrote that down too. She applied for work. 14 applications in 6 weeks. 2 responses. 1 interview. No offer. She applied again. Skills are not just qualifications on a paper, they are the language in which your future introduces itself. Learn every dialect you can. One of them will open the door. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Thandi was ironing Nomvula's work clothes as a thank you for the couch. A logistics and supply chain company in the Cape Town CBD, Wavecrest Distribution, had received her application for an administrative coordinator role. They wanted her to come in on Thursday. She put the iron down very carefully. Then she picked up her phone and called her mother in Mitchell's Plain. Her mother prayed on the phone for 4 minutes without pausing for breath. Thandi held the phone to her ear and let the prayer wash over her like water. Thursday morning, she arrived 12 minutes early. She was calm. She was prepared. She had researched the company the night before and printed 3 pages of notes that she had reduced to 5 bullet points she kept in her memory. The interviewer, a woman named Miss Hendricks, asked her about her experience with logistics systems. Thandi told her about the system she had developed in the church digital class for tracking charitable food donations, how she had created a spreadsheet that cross-referenced weekly intake, distribution routes, and recipient needs, reducing waste by nearly a third. Ms. Hendricks looked at her over her glasses. "That was volunteer work," she said. "Yes," Thandi said. "But I treated it like a contract. How you do the small things is how you do everything. Your volunteer work, your side project, your unpaid contribution, these are not lesser versions of your ability. They are the fullest expression of it." The offer came the following Monday. It was not a large salary. But it was a salary, consistent, deposited on the 25th of every month, with medical aid and 2 weeks leave. After the cleaning jobs and the ironing and the envelope stuffing she had done to contribute to Nomvula's household, it felt like abundance. She started on a Wednesday. Wavecrest Distribution occupied the 5th floor of a building on Bree Street, with a view of the mountain on clear days and a fog bank on all others. The office was run with the slightly chaotic energy of a company that was growing faster than its systems, which meant that Thandi's particular skill, turning information into systems, was not just useful, it was urgently needed. Within her first month, she had reorganized the shared filing system, created a tracking template for outgoing freight that 3 different departments began using, and identified a billing error that had been quietly costing the company 11,000 rand a month for 7 months. The managing director, a reserved man named Mr. Abrahams, called her into his office when she brought him the billing discovery. He looked at the figures. Then he looked at her. "How long have you been here?" he asked. 5 weeks, she said. He nodded slowly, said nothing more, but something had shifted in the room. Lesson: you do not need to announce your value. Demonstrate it, quietly, consistently. Let the work speak first and your reputation follow. The person who noticed Thandi most, however, was not Mr. Abrahams. It was Kwame Asante, the head of business development, Ghanaian-born and Cape Town raised, who had an almost supernatural ability to identify people whose potential was larger than their current role. He was 38, focused, unhurried, the kind of man who asked questions and then listened to the entire answer before forming a response, which, in a busy office, made him immediately unusual. He started stopping at Thandi's desk the way deliberate people stop, with a reason. Your freight tracker, can I use the same logic for client onboarding? The billing error you found, are there similar patterns in the Q1 invoices? She answered every question thoroughly. He listened every time. 3 months after her arrival, he asked if she would like to have lunch and discuss a new operational framework he was developing. She said yes, professionally, clearly, with no confusion about what kind of invitation it was. It was, as it turned out, exactly the professional conversation he had described. And also the beginning of something else entirely, though neither of them acknowledged that for another 4 months. The people worth building with will show their interest through consistent respect before anything else. Watch how someone treats your mind before you consider anything further. Thandi and Kwame dated quietly for 8 months before anyone at the office noticed. They were careful, not deceptive, but careful. They both understood that what was developing between them deserved to be solid before it became public, and that solid things take time. Kwame met Thandi's mother on a Sunday afternoon in Mitchell's Plain. He brought Coke sisters from a bakery in Observatory and sat in the small sitting room and answered every question her mother asked him with the same unhurried directness he brought to everything. Thandi's mother, who had prayed for 4 minutes straight on the phone about a job interview, did not require long. After Kwame had gone, she looked at her daughter and said, "That man listens when other people are talking. That is rare." It was the highest compliment she gave. They were engaged 14 months after the first lunch. Married 6 months after that, a warm, abundant ceremony in Belleville with a DJ who took request and Nomvula as maid of honor and Thandi's gap-toothed smile so wide it seemed to go on forever. The right person will value what the wrong environment tried to diminish. Your worth was never the problem, the wrong room was. 2 years into the marriage, Thandi and Kwame made the decision together. They would build their own company. They called it Asante-Nkosi Logistics, both their names equal weight, no asterisk. It was registered on a Thursday afternoon at the CIPC office in the Cape Town CBD, with Nomvula as their witness and a combined starting capital of 85,000 rand. They worked from their dining room table for the first year. Kwame managed client acquisition and operations. Thandi built the financial systems, the compliance framework, and the administrative infrastructure, the invisible architecture that makes a company actually function. By the end of year 1, 9 clients, 1 small warehouse space in Peru, and 2 part-time staff. By the end of year 2, 23 clients, a full office, 9 full-time employees. By the end of year 3, a contract with a major retail chain with distribution points across the Western Cape, the deal that turned a promising small business into a serious mid-sized company. Thandi was no longer a coordinator, she was a director, a co-founder. A woman who had built something from a dining room table and a skill she had learned twice a week in a community center in Belleville. The woman who had been searched in her own room in Claremont now signed off on contracts worth more than Mr. Dlamuka's entire property portfolio. Start at the dining room table. Start with 85,000 rand and 2 names of equal weight. Start imperfectly and adjust. The only start that fails is the one that never happens. It was Nomvula who first saw the name on the interview schedule. She was not working at Asante-Nkosi, she had her own career in social work, but she had come in that Tuesday morning to drop off a birthday cake for Thandi and had spotted the printed schedule on the reception desk while signing the visitor log. She said nothing at the time. She waited until she and Thandi were alone in the kitchen, cutting the cake. "Thandi," she said carefully, "one of your interview candidates this afternoon." Thandi looked up. "Zola Dlamuka." The knife paused. Thandi looked at Nomvula. Nomvula looked back. Then Thandi set the knife down, reached for a slice of cake, took a bite, and chewed thoughtfully. "Okay," she said. "Okay," Nomvula said. That is all. What else is there to say? Thandi said. She has an interview at 2 o'clock. Let us make sure the process is fair. Nomvula stared at her friend for a long moment. You are either the calmest person I have ever met, she said, or you have already planned something. Thandi took another bite of cake and said nothing. The most powerful response to a returning adversary is not panic and not revenge. It is preparation. Know who you are before they walk through the door. Zola arrived at 1:45 p.m. She was well-dressed, tailored, composed, carrying a leather portfolio. She handed her CV to the receptionist with the practiced ease of someone who had done many interviews. She sat in the waiting area and scrolled her phone. The reception area of Asante-Nkosi Logistics was open-plan and bright, with a large window overlooking the street. The company name was on the wall behind the desk in clean, modern lettering. Thandi's office was at the end of the corridor, behind a glass panel door with 2 names on it. Zola had not yet looked at those names. She was looking at a larger woman who had emerged from the corridor to collect documents from the printer near reception. The woman was in a well-fitted blazer, natural hair, reading glasses, moving with the comfortable authority of someone entirely at home in the space. Zola looked at her. Then she leaned toward the other waiting candidate, a young man she did not know, and said, quietly but not quietly enough, imagine showing up to work looking like that. Some people genuinely have no self-awareness. The young man looked straight ahead and said nothing. The receptionist, who had heard everything, also said nothing. She simply picked up her phone and sent a message. And in her office at the end of the corridor, Thandi's phone lit up with a single line of text. It read, "It's exactly what we expected. A person who has not done the work to change will always eventually show you the same face they showed you before. Not because people cannot change, they can, but because real change cannot be performed on demand. It lives in the unguarded moments." At 2:05 p.m., Thandi's assistant knocked and opened the door. The 2 o'clock is here. Send her in, Thandi said. The door opened. Zola walked in with the professional energy of someone who had prepared well. And then she saw Thandi. The pause lasted 4 seconds. A long time, in a silent room. Thandi watched every micro-expression cross Zola's face in those 4 seconds. Recognition, confusion, recalculation, and then the performance of composure. It was a fast and mostly convincing performance. But Thandi had spent years studying systems. She knew the difference between a process running smoothly and a process running in damage control. Good afternoon, Zola, Thandi said. Please, sit down. Zola sat. It has been a few years, Thandi said pleasantly. Thank you for coming in. Composure is the loudest language in a quiet room. Speak it fluently. Thandi ran the first 20 minutes of the interview with complete professionalism. She asked about Zola's experience in operations management, about her approach to team conflict, about the time she had made an error in a professional setting and what she had learned. Zola answered well. She had clearly prepared. Her instincts were sound and her experience was relevant. Then Thandi set her pen down. I want to ask you something outside the standard questions, she said. I ask everyone this, so please treat it as part of our standard process. Zola nodded. Describe a time when you treated someone unfairly, and what, if anything, you did about it afterward. The room was very still. Zola looked at the table, then at Thandi. Is this about Claremont? She said. It is an open question, Thandi said. You may answer with any example that feels true. A long silence. And then, slowly, something in Zola's posture changed. The right question, asked calmly, does more work than any confrontation. It creates a space where the truth can walk in on its own. When Zola finally spoke, her voice had lost its professional finish. I treated you badly, she said. When you lived in our property, I said things that they were unkind. They were more than unkind. She paused. And when my aunt's bracelet was found, I let my father believe a version of events that protected me at your expense. I knew you had not been snooping. I knew where the bracelet was. She stopped. Thandi waited. I was 23, Zola continued. I know that is not an excuse. I was insecure and I don't know, frightened of things I couldn't name. And I took that out on you in ways I am not proud of. And this afternoon, Thandi said, in the reception area, Zola closed her eyes. I heard what you said to the young man sitting next to you, Thandi said, quietly. My receptionist heard it too. The silence that followed was its own kind of sentence. Then Zola pressed her hands flat on the table and looked up. I am sorry, she said. Her eyes were wet. For Claremont. For today. For all of it. I have been trying to be better. I thought I was better. And then today she shook her head. I am genuinely sorry, Thandi. A real apology does not arrive with justifications leading the way. It arrives with the wrong fully named, the harm fully acknowledged, and no conditions attached to the remorse. Learn to recognize the genuine article and learn to offer it yourself when you are the one who is wrong. Thandi received the apology with the stillness she had practiced for years. She did not rush to comfort. She did not dismiss. She let the apology take up the space it deserved. Then she said, I accept your apology, Zola, and I want you to understand that I have not carried bitterness toward you or your family. What happened in Claremont was painful, but it put me on a path I would not trade for anything. Zola nodded, her eyes still bright. The position you have applied for, Thandi said, requires someone who demonstrates consistent integrity in important moments and in small ones equally. What I saw in the reception area today was the same instinct I saw 6 years ago. Not cruelty, perhaps, but a habit. And habits, in a company culture built the way ours is, become expensive. Zola was very still. I want you to keep doing the work, Thandi said. Not for a job here, for yourself. Because the woman in there, she indicated the space where the real Zola had briefly emerged, she is worth more than the habit. She stood, extended her hand. Zola shook it, and left. Wisdom is knowing the difference between someone who has changed and someone who is sorry they were caught. Both deserve your grace. Only one deserves your trust. That evening, Thandi told Kwame everything over dinner. He listened the way he always listened, completely, without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. How do you feel? He asked. She considered it honestly. Lighter, she said. I didn't realize I had been carrying it until it was over. He nodded. And the position? No, she said. Not yet. Maybe never, I can't know that. But not today. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. You handled it with more grace than most people would have, he said. I handled it the way I needed to, she said. For me, not for her. That distinction, grace extended for your own wholeness, not for the benefit of the person who hurt you, was something Thandi had learned the hard way. In a laundry room, under a bare bulb, with a bracelet in her palm and a decision to make. The grace you extend to people who wronged you is not a gift you give them. It is a gift you give yourself, the freedom to stop being defined by what they did to you. 3 months later, Nomvula sent Thandi a news article. A property dispute involving a prominent Claremont landlord. A court case. Loans defaulted. Multiple properties placed under sequestration. The name in the article was Mr. Dlamuka. Thandi read the article once. She set her phone down. She picked up her coffee and took a sip and looked out of the office window at Table Mountain, which was doing what it does in Cape Town in autumn, wearing a single white cloud like a very slow-moving heart. She did not feel triumph. She genuinely did not. She felt something more complex and more peaceful, the feeling of a woman who had done nothing to cause someone else's fall, had wished nothing dark toward anyone, and could therefore sit with the news without any part of it sticking to her. She thought of the night she had sat on Nomvula's pull-out couch in Belleville and made a promise to herself. She had not promised revenge. She had promised something, and she had built it. When you build your life from integrity rather than from the desire to see others punished, you earn the right to receive news of consequences with clean hands and a quiet heart. That cleanliness is worth more than any revenge. Asante-Nkosi, now Thandi Asante, turned 34 on a Friday. Kwame took her to a restaurant in the waterfront that had a view of the harbor and a dessert menu that required serious decision-making. Nomvula and her partner came. 2 colleagues who had become genuine friends came. Thandi's mother came, dressed in her good coat, the one she wore for important occasions. After the dinner, while Kwame was talking to the waiter about the bill, Thandi's mother took her hand under the table and held it. I prayed for you, she said. All those years. When things were hard. When that man searched your room. When you were sleeping on Nomvula's couch. I know, Mama, Thandi said. I never told you what I prayed, her mother said. What did you pray? Her mother smiled, the same gap-toothed smile Thandi had inherited. I prayed that whatever they tried to take from you, God would return double. Thandi looked at the harbor, at the lights on the water, at the mountain behind the city, enormous and ancient and entirely indifferent to the small human drummers at its feet. She thought about the bracelet, the bare bulb, the 2 bags and the borrowed baki, and she felt, completely, genuinely, that the prayer had been answered. The people who pray for you in your lowest moments are carrying something sacred on your behalf. When you rise, remember who was on their knees. So what does Thandi's story teach us? It teaches us that your appearance, your address, and your account balance are not your value. They are your circumstances. Circumstances change. Value is built. It teaches us that the most powerful response to humiliation is not a clever comeback, it is a life so well constructed that the humiliation becomes irrelevant. Thandi did not win because Zola apologized. She had already won. The interview was simply the moment the scoreboard became visible. It teaches us that returning the bracelet, doing the honest thing when the dishonest thing was easier and arguably more satisfying, was not naive. It was strategic in the deepest sense. Because it meant that Thandi never had to wonder who she was. And people who know who they are cannot be permanently diminished by people who do not. It teaches us that the skills you build in your hardest season are not charity. They are architecture. The spreadsheet Thandi built for the food bank. The filing system she redesigned in week 5. The billing error she found. None of these were accidents. They were the direct result of a woman who treated every task, paid or unpaid, recognized or unrecognized, as worthy of her full ability. It teaches us that forgiveness is not the same as trust. Thandi forgave completely. She declined the hire completely. Both things were true at the same time. Forgiveness lives in the heart. Trust must be demonstrated in behavior, consistently, in the small moments, especially in the moments the person believes no one is watching. And finally, it teaches us that the arc of justice in a human life is long and not always visible. Mr. Dlamuka's property empire looked permanent. Zola's confidence looked like security. Thandi's pull-out couch in Belleville looked like the end of something. None of those appearances were accurate. Never judge a chapter as the whole story. The ending belongs to the person who refuses to stop writing. If you have ever been laughed at for your body, this story was for you. If you have ever had your room turned inside out by people who decided your guilt before they had a single fact, this story was for you. If you have ever carried a bag out of a place that should have been safe, wondering how long the hard part was going to last, this story was absolutely for you. Because Thandi's story is not just a Cape Town story. It is not just a South African story. It is the story of every person who was underestimated, quietly, consistently, loudly, publicly, and decided to build anyway. Not to prove the people wrong, not to watch them fall, but because something inside them refused to accept that this was the whole story. That refusal, that quiet, stubborn, daily refusal, is one of the most powerful forces in a human life. You do not need to be loud about it. You do not need to announce it. You simply need to keep showing up. Keep learning. Keep doing the honest thing in the laundry room under the bare bulb when no one is watching. And trust that the story is not over. It is not over for Thandi. And it is not over for you. If this story taught you something today, if it moved you, if it challenged you, if it reminded you of your own strength, please share this video with one person who needs to hear it right now. And before you go, click on the video appearing on your screen right now, because the next story is just as powerful, and I promise you will not want to miss it. Thank you for watching Helen's Cultural Stories. I will see you in the next one.